Welcome to Studying Law Around the World. I'm Claudio Klaus. In each episode, I talk with lawyers, law students, and professors from different parts of the world to talk about legal education, careers, and what the profession looks like in real life. We talk about the hard parts, the surprises, and the decisions that shaped their paths. Whether you're planning to study abroad, thinking about working in another legal system, or just curious about how law works around the world, this podcast is for you.
So many of the guests on this podcast have talked about how important it is to have strong writing skills as a lawyer. It's true, written communication is essential in this profession, but it can also be one of the trickiest skills to master. If you find your writing feels a bit clunky, or you're getting a lot of edits on your work, or perhaps you're breaking into an English speaking jurisdiction for the first time, Grammatica International can help. I'm Rebecca Lockwood, the lawyer, mediator, and educator behind Grammatica, and we help lawyers and law students to write more sharply, speak more clearly, and advance their careers with group training and one-on-one skills coaching designed just for legal professionals. I have worked with so many lawyers like you who are exceptionally smart, qualified, and capable, but need a bit of guidance to stand out in a competitive legal market. And I get it myself, having lived and worked in 5 countries during my 17 years in law and education. Whether you're looking to sharpen your writing skills generally, refresh your CV, or draft an application for a law program, Grammatica can help. Visit grammatica.co to learn more.
Today, I have the opportunity to speak with Adriana Aguena, who is a leader and a very influential personality in the LLM world in the US. She's the assistant director at McGeorge School of Law. She supports the LLM, SJD, and exchange students from around the world, helping them to navigate their academic and professional journeys in the US. She's a McGeorge alum. She's also a Brazilian trained lawyer, and she brings deep knowledge, care, and a global perspective to everything she does. Today, I wanted to really thank you so much for being here with us today, Adriana.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure sharing my story, not only as the assistant director at McGeorge School of Law with international programs, but also a view or share my experience as a former LLM student at McGeorge. So thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. And I wanted to talk with you today because I saw that McGeorge is soon launching a new LLM program in US law and policy. And that's going to be an online program. So I wanted to hear all about it. Can you tell our listeners a little bit to start our conversation today?
Yes, very exciting news, especially because there is a need. There's a growing need in response to this need. We are now launching the U.S. law and policy. In reality, just to give a context of our school, McGeorge School of Law and the LLM program specifically, we've been working with the LLM for over 30 years. And we have had a successful experience with the LLM in water and environmental law online, which we already have a successful business model, the business experience that has been working for many international lawyers who are unable to come to the United States to study. So the idea is to provide those lawyers, those professionals, legal professionals, because not only for lawyers, but also for scholars, even for exchange program in a way that want to have that exposure to the US law, this would be a very good option to gain the knowledge about US law, the US jurisdiction. We know that we have lawyers from all over the world, even from civil law countries like Brazil and many others, that want to learn more about how the common law system works and the US jurisdictions and the court system. So there is a lot of knowledge how they can acquire online, including the policies and cross litigation, depending on the country they are coming from. And if there is any sort of interaction with the United States, they would be able to access all this information without having to relocate to the United States for a full-time or in-person class. In other words, this is actually ideal for lawyers that are also working in government agencies back home. We have had several lawyers that are working for their governments that want to have the access to the US policy and lawmaking in order to better their own system, to compare, or to have another tool to probably find other options for resolutions of certain legal issues that are coming up. In fact, with technology, intellectual property, there's so much going on in that area of law that is innovating every single day. So having that gateway, that ability to learn more about a jurisdiction that is focusing on innovation, where we're here in Sacramento, the capital of California. So we are watching very closely how the laws are being made, how the lobbyists are working in order to produce new laws. So that gives not only those lawyers working government agencies, but also for those who work for non-governmental organizations. Again, policymaking across the border, law firms at large, international organizations that engage with US law, or another important point here, those who need to interpret the US policies within their jurisdiction. Due to all this globalization, all this cross litigation among us countries with the United States, being able to interpret the law to understand how it is applied. Again, black letter law, there's always that gray area open for interpretation. So we are trying to make sure that those students have access to that bigger conversation to best prepare themselves to represent their clients, their law firms, or even out of curiosity as far as, negotiations and arbitrations and other ways to solve global legal issues. So it's open to all, especially for those who are busy lawyers, not being able to take a leave of absence, depending on where you work, to be here, but also want to acquire the knowledge. So it's the cost benefit. We'll talk more about it, but it's also cheaper. It's more accessible in a way for those who are unable to have that time or the finances in alignment to be able to be here, but can still get the benefits of the knowledge that is needed for their expansion of their careers.
Amazing, Adriana. Thank you so much for sharing that. And as a former alumni from an LLM program, I wanted to ask you as well if there's a few things that you would point out as unique features or experiences that the LLM online provides that maybe set it apart from the traditional in person LLM. You did mention already the accessibility and access to it, both in a financial term, but also in a way that you don't need to worry about relocating and all of that. But I wanted to know what else is there, for somebody looking for this experience. Why should I do an LLM online?
Great question. And that's the dilemma, the $1 million question, right? So it's all about number one, flexibility, number two, customization. And those are the two main items that meet your career goals. So it's not for everybody. In fact, to be very honest with you, you need to ask yourself, do I enjoy? Is it something that really motivates in being an online class? Because obviously it's a different format than an in person experience. The knowledge is still there, it's the interaction that is really, I would say, challenging for some, but appreciated by others. So you need to, number one, check within your ability to stay connected and engaged in the class and online classes. But the important thing is number one, understand your needs. Number two, how can you elevate, maximize the knowledge, the exposure that you're having while you're back home? I'll give you an example, real example, that makes it very appealing. Some lawyers or legal professionals that intend to take the California bar, for example. I'm saying California, but please, folks, do know that depending on your background and desire to also practice law in different states, you may, I'm going to say may because every case is different and it needs to be analyzed differently, but you may be able to also sit for the New York bar, for example, which is one of the most competitive, California, New York, or other jurisdiction, another state. So, for those who are interested in pursuing that pathway, being able to have the ability to take some of the classes that are taught on the bar exam is a huge advantage. Okay, I'll just give you an example. We offer here with the US Law and Policy contracts. That's one of the subjects that's taught on the California bar exam. New York as well. But New York, I'm going to make here a note that in New York jurisdiction, they do not recognize the online class, which is the distant learning. So I just want to note that, and we can explore more if needed. But for those who are thinking about California specifically, contracts, wills, and trust, that's another subject test in the bar exam. Business organization, environmental law, not the environmental law not tested. It's an elective. But just to give you an example of how you can maximize, but also pick and choose those classes that is of your interest. So you have the bar tested subjects as well as elective classes that, depending on your area of law, you absolutely can customize. For the elective classes, just to give you an example, the flexibility, survey of international property. So those who are in the international or intellectual property arena, they can pick and choose those classes that you would benefit them. Evidence is a bar tested class that you can also take online. Legal English, not a bar tested. However, I'll tell you, I personally took that class many years ago when I did my LLM. It was a very foundational class, not only helped me with developing the writing, speaking, but also the legal terminology. So it's a foundational class we hear over and over, which is a supporting classes for those whose English, language is not first language is not English. So definitely a support for those in that situation. And introduction to legal analysis, learning more about the sources of law and the way the Americans really write their memos and how they communicate in the work environment. So all this to say that you have the flexibility, the ability to customize the classes, whether they are bar tested or they are electives that will help you to maximize your career. You have the ability to do so. The other benefit is the cost benefit. Since you are taking the online classes, there will be certain fees that will not apply to you. And I'll give an example. So, medical insurance. You're not here, you don't need to prove that. And that's a big chunk of money that you save because it's a mandatory fee that the institution requires. Some other small fees that the institution would be charging an in person class, it would not be applied for the online class, which translates that financially it would definitely open more doors for those who have some limitation. So, in other words, you can choose the classes, you can choose how many semesters you're going to be dedicating. There's not a specific number, minimum or maximum number of the classes. As long as you completed the 24 units, you can spread as long as you comply, of course, with all the requirements. You are within the successful pathway for the LLM program. So there is flexibility. Of course, you will meet with your academic advisor to discuss class choices, to discuss career approach, and how you can maximize those classes to support you to elevate in your career. For those who are really looking forward to utilizing the LLM online to elevate the career, to learn more about the law course and the public and policy exposure, including the government law and policy making, that there are specific classes that you can take that will help you to build your own knowledge and it will translate really well for the type of work that you're doing. Just some example for you to start thinking about, like legislature, lawmaking. As I mentioned, we are here in Sacramento, so we really have full access to how the laws are made, the process of lawmaking and the reason behind it, right? This is the why. Why is this being created? And there is so much learning in that aspect. The executive branch, how works here in the United States compared to the jurisdiction that you're coming from. So comparative law, international law, those are areas of law that you can focus even in an online format where you have the exposure to the knowledge as well as the ability to, and we're going to talk more about it, but the access to the faculty that is teaching those classes, the knowledge, the networking, it's all there for you. The only difference is the online format. And we'll talk more about how to stay engaged, because that's the thing, right? To stay motivated. Because I promise you'll be intellectually a challenge. It's a challenge. It's a very rigorous program, but it's paced according to your needs, according to your availability. And this is all discussed prior to the beginning of your classes to make sure that the transition is as smooth as possible, and to make sure that you are engaged, to make sure that you are integrated, and to make sure that you belong to McGeorge family. Because even with the distance, we are still able, thank God to this technology, to stay connected in so many levels.
Absolutely fantastic. And since you mentioned that, let's dive into that a little bit, and let me ask you then, how is the university, how is the faculty wanting to ensure that students are still connected, that they can still, meet people, that they can talk with their fellow students in a way that is still meaningful, even with, the possible challenges of technology, or also the advancements and with the helpful resources we have now. As for example, we're recording this podcast right now. Unfortunately, I'm not in California as we speak. But
You're welcome to join us. Come and visit.
yeah, so I'd love to hear a little more about, the networking aspect of it and the contact with faculty.
Yes. And again, meaningful interaction is key. It's essential that the students feel connected, that they belong, they're part of a family, right? So, in order to do that, there have been so many ways to make that interaction meaningful. I'll give you some examples. So, we do offer live online sessions, not only for the lectures, but also for questions and answers, the famous Q&A. Again, it's just so important to be connected and to hear from the faculty that is supporting you throughout your journey. Also, live discussions, right? There will be set a time and a day where there will be a theme or a topic that will be discussed. For those who are not available, of course, they can access the recording later on. But I want to make sure that students carve some time, because this is also a priority to be able to see, online your classmates, and the interaction is definitely very important. Also, regular faculty office hours, super important to have that one-on-one conversation with your professor, to maximize the relationship, to learn from the experts in the area, to feel comfortable to you ask your question, and also build that connection. Remember, networking is key for so many things, right? And even talking to a faculty, there's so much value in there, not only for the career aspect, but also, you know, a letter of recommendation in the future, right? You really maximize that relationship. I think it's important to also build on that. We also offer the peer-to-peer breakout rooms. So you also can work and should be working with your classmates to establish that bond, and also to share. We learn so much by sharing, by listening, and by also sharing our explanations, especially because imagine lawyers, legal professionals from all over the world together sharing how certain things are resolved in their home countries. So you learn so much from others, because it's all depending on the culture or the religion or the source of law, civil common law, or a combination of both. So there's so many layers that you can't really teach unless you are exposed to that type of audience. We also have online discussion boards. There's always that interaction with other students, and also to hear and to see how they think, how they solve problems, which is, again, a learning opportunity for us, curious litigators, professionals that were trying to think outside the box and being creative, utilizing solutions that you may have not thought about, and it may not be common in your country or in your area of law. All students will be participating and are eligible to participate in the student network events, online events, and in person. If you have the ability to come and visit, to come and participate on the events, please do so. We'll be, more than happy to welcome you and provide you all the information necessary to provide you with that experience in person as well. And lastly, but not least important, students are eligible or invited to all lectures, workshops, events, panels that the law school offers to all students, whether you are in person whether you're online, you have access to those events. So we'll be sharing with you, and then you, of course, can schedule accordingly to your availability, but you do have access to those events.
Incredible. Sounds like a lot of effort has been made to make sure that everybody's included and they don't miss out on all of that. But it also sounds like you can still have a career while you do it. So I find that very, very interesting. And I got curious here too, for international students who I believe are the main public for this LLM, who have never studied in the US or are not very familiar with it, how does this online format also help them to adjust to learning about this system?
Great question. I love it. Because let's be honest, it's challenge, right? You don't have that one-on-one personal contact. But we have specifically designed, we put a lot of thought and love into this to design an international student orientation that include modules on the structure of the United States, the judicial system, how to brief and read a case, what to expect in the classroom. In other words, there are specific times where during the orientation we're going to be addressing those number one questions that students have coming from different jurisdictions, but also what type of support that we can provide during the online journey. So, another example, and I mentioned earlier about the legal English class, which I am a big fan of because, again, gives us international professionals the ability to improve our English and the writing and speaking and the way we think, the way we write, the way they here in the United States communicate, which is very different from Brazil, I'll tell you, in terms of the style of writing. So it's a very fun class, I think. But this is, it's a support students to be present, to be comfortable in their first class, even if English is not their first language. So you're going to be improving the speaking, the legal terminology, and feel confident to communicate. Our faculty is used to teaching international students. They're very aware of the needs of the international audience, and they are ready to provide context clarification. Remember, we are all coming from different jurisdictions or countries. We have different accents. We bring in different background, which makes the LLM program online very rich. Because let's be honest, where else in the world you can meet with professionals from all over the world with a whole different background and experience that can be shared with you in a screen. It's very unique in that sense that you don't have to leave your home for many reasons, but you still have the knowledge and exposure that you need in order to grow in your career. And not only professionally, but also personally. The exposure, when we say we travel, we have an experience. We are really trying to translate this experience, even if it's online, even if there's not that personal touch. It's possible, of course, with a lot of willingness of the student to participate, to be engaged, and a lot of use of our technology and the ability to offer many options for the students to participate in within their busy schedules. That's why you have asynchronous classes that it can be accessed at any time, anywhere in the world. And you have synchronous classes. That's when there is a time and a place, right? Online, on Zoom, a time that you're going to be meeting with those professors as well as with your classmates. So just to give you another example here of the way that we interact with our students to make sure the experience is as real as possible, I'll give you an example. During the class, in person, also online, the professors usually have hypos. What if this? What if that? In that case, if you're discussing a case law, and there are different jurisdictions, your professor will definitely call on you. In other words, they will ask you to give your opinion about the case or share the facts, whether you agree or not with the decision of the judge. And in that, there's so much learning because you are improvising. You are allowing yourself to defend your client, if that's the case, to have that ability to create the confidence to share your thoughts, to share how you are thinking about resolving that specific case. Also, for those that are in the comparative law and learning more about civil law, the common law system, it's very interesting to hear from others, including their rationale about how different jurisdictions would solve certain litigation or certain legal issues because of the way we approach the law, the source of law. Where is it coming from? And why in the past they have decided like this or like that? You will definitely improve. You will be engaged. You will be intellectually stimulated to contribute. You are expected to contribute, in other words, to interact and really speak up your mind. And the more examples, the more you bring into the classroom, the more everybody wins. Specifically the one who is talking, because you can only teach someone if you really know what the knowledge that you're trying to share with others. So everybody wins. And it's, as I said, it will become a family, an online, a virtual family, but a family that is going to support each other throughout this journey.
Fantastic. So we've covered how the course is going to be relayed, how everybody gets access to the faculty. We covered how networking and interacting with your colleagues will work. We also talked about how, you're able to adjust to learn the US system, even if it's your first experience out of country or first experience in the US specifically. And now I'm also curious about careers. I know that people do LLMs for different reasons, and of course, a US credentials too holds a lot of value in the world. So I wanted to hear a little more about, are there some kinds of career supports as well that will be available to those online LLM students?
Super important piece, because let's be honest, you have all this knowledge. You need and want the return on your investment, right? And one way, not only to maximize your career, is to have the support of our Career Service Office, which is our CSO. They provide one on one virtual advising to our students, resume and cover letter reviews, and LinkedIn profile assistance, and interviewing coaching. And let me say, from a former student perspective, these are so important skills because, again, coming from a different country, a different, judicial system, you really don't know. How would you know, right? How they do business or international business. So, just to give you an example, if you were to be interviewed by an American law firm, even if you're working online, there are certain standards that they are expecting, even including the resume. Usually it's one page, sometimes two pages, versus a curriculum vitae, which you could have more pages or more explanation of the projects that you have worked, the things that you have done and accomplished. So small things that really make the difference to be in accordance with the standard, the practice of standard that is expected from a legal professional, global legal professional. So those type of assistance is much, much appreciated. Virtual alumni networking access, again, connection, even if it's an online introduction to a certain person, a certain profession that you are interested in connecting, they are here to support. Our office is here to make that bridge between you and the people that you want to connect. In other words, you have full access to all the services that are offered to in person students and anything that you need. Including, I have to say, we offer also wellness services for our students because throughout this journey, it's a challenging journey. It's a great journey, but it's also very challenging intellectually and mentally, you know, and it has sometimes those challenges, especially for those professionals who are balancing a work life, a professional life, right? A personal life, family. So you know that you also have the assistance of dedicated, trained professionals to support you on your journey. In other words, you can schedule a counseling appointment to talk to someone if you're going through some challenges or just need someone to hear about what it is going on with you. Mental health, super important. They will remind you of your self care. Again, you spend so much time in front, the monitor while you're working, and then you have your online classes in the evening or on the weekends. You want to make sure that you are enjoying your journey, that you are healthy mentally, physically. There will be also other alternatives, events where you can participate as well in terms of orientations and physical activities. You can do online as well. But just to summarize, not only your career, which you have a full access, but also other academic and counseling to make sure that the wellness is being in check and as well as you are enjoying the program overall.
Fantastic. And moving forward here, I think I'll probably have one or two more questions here to you for us to finish this podcast today. But I wanted to ask about two specific points here. So I was wondering if there's any new resources or technology tools that McGeorge will be using to deliver this program.
Yes, yes. Technology is evolving day by day, as you all know, and we're keeping our eye open to make sure that we are up to date. We are also thinking about new technology being implemented in the very near future to facilitate the access to classes on the go, whether you are driving your car, carefully driving your car, but you're also listening to a lecture to maximize your time. So students have full access to our Canvas, which, for example, is our learning management system. In that Canvas, you're going to have access to all the videos, all the classes that you have registered for, quizzes that are available for our students. That is actually part one of the assignments during their program. Discussion boards are going to be available in that platform. All the assignments, which are very important to make sure that you have access at all times and any time during the day or the night that you have availability for that. And of course, office hours. So there are a lot of features in the Canvas that you can utilize to make sure that you are on a schedule, that if you need even to, for example, extend a deadline, you have those options and full access to your professors and advisors as well. So there's also a dedicated online student orientation to help new students to learn how to access the systems, how to get a hold of us, how to get a hold of IT if you have any technical problem or needed to be troubleshooted. In other words, there is a team to support you at any time during your day, my day, your night, doesn't matter, to support you 24 hours, to allow you to have access to what you need to do, your homework, your assignments, to be successful in this. Uh,
Amazing. And to wrap today's episode, to ask you, as you look ahead, how does McGeorge plan to grow and improve this exciting online program to keep up with the changes in the legal professional profession? You just mentioned technology evolves every day. There's so many factors to factor in. So I wanted to hear all about it.
Fantastic. Well, looking ahead, many things, many ideas. Our brains is working around the clock here. We are already exploring new elective courses in such areas like cybersecurity, so IP in general, but digital trade, we can see a trend coming up where again all this innovation with technology, there is a need, there's a growing need for that. We are also working on developing more experiential components like virtual externships, work in progress there, but trying to figure it out how we can translate that experience virtually, simulations and case studies tailored to the current global legal issues. As you know, we are all going through changes in the law, in the politics, and we are keeping our eyes and ears open to see if there will be potential legal issues that would be of interest of our online population to have access since the changes affect the entire world, right? The long term vision, I would say, includes building a global alumni network for online students. Again, trying to expand the language support for our students worldwide, continue to invest in faculty training for online teaching excellence so they can really shine and bring their expertise in a screen. And that the legal professionals become more global and technology driven. We want to make Georgia Online programs to lead that way, training the staff, our faculty, making sure we have access to the all high tech technology for our students to have access on the go, whether it's an app, work in progress there, to facilitate the access to information 24/7. So that's the ultimate vision for us here at McGeorge School of Law.
Amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time to share some of the latest developments of this very, very exciting opportunity. And I really appreciate you joining in the podcast and sharing these insights.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm open to support your listeners and your followers in their journey and expanding their mind and their careers with so much good information that is happening all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you. And for those of you listening, please make sure to check the show notes where you'll be able to find the links to be able to contact Adriana and also to learn more about McGeorge's new program. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.